So the most recent inflation report was just released. Numbers kind of came in line with analysts' expectations. Inflation was up 0.2% for the month of July, and then 2.7% year over year, which don't sound like massive numbers, but what we want to dig into on this week's edition of Off the Charts is just how much these little numbers start to compound and how it erodes our buying power. The other thing we want to look at is what is generally the cause of inflation. A lot of the conventional wisdom right now is saying tariffs are causing inflation, but we would point to a couple different things on why we at YTS do not believe that tariffs are causing inflation. First thing we would look at are tariffs are generally a one-time price adjustment. It's not something that consistently happens month over month or year over year. And then a lot of the price increases are absorbed along the supply chain. But the two most important factors are tariffs don't impact the money supply, meaning no additional money is being put into the economy or printed for tariffs. And just as important, it doesn't affect the velocity of money, meaning the speed at which money is changing hands. And remember, just from an economic standpoint, the money supply and velocity of money are two of the largest drivers of inflation. And we don't think tariffs are increasing either one of those. The other point that we want to get across is the narrative around inflation, discussing inflation, we feel like is backwards. When you go to the grocery store and you see that toothpaste is now $8, it used to be $5 a couple years ago, a lot of people get angry at the companies and say they raised their prices. But the better way to look at it is that your dollar just buys less. It has very little to do with the business or services that you're spending your money on, and more the government that just printed entirely too much money over the years. So we don't let government off the hook in these conversations. Your dollar is just buying significantly less. And actually, if we go back since 1913, that was the year the Federal Reserve was created, mainly to keep inflation in check. If we look over the last 112 years, inflation is up an astounding 3,191%. To put that in perspective, an item that cost $1 in 1913 now costs close to $32. And again, something that costs $100 now costs over $3,200. It's just amazing, the growth of this. And again, we kind of get lulled to sleep on these numbers when you see 0.2% for the month or 2.7 for the year. When you compound it, especially if we look at just even the last 5 years, from 2020 to 25, inflation is up over 25%. That's meaningful for every American, for every consumer. So just to sum up, the inflation we felt over the last 5 or 6 years is real. We were spending $100 for dinner 5, 6 years ago. Now we're spending $125, $130. The second point, though, we don't believe tariffs have caused further inflation. We believe a lot of that damage was inflicted during COVID. That is why we are optimistic that we will see inflation drop below this 2.7, hopefully 2% mark over the next couple years and give all Americans out there a little bit of a break. Thanks for tuning into this week's edition of Off the Charts. We'll see you next week.